Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns, and once again it is such a delight to be back with you for yet another Sound Off Louisiana feature. Today we'll be profiling a gentleman named Larry Bankston. Mr. Bankston is a former state senator who served in the Louisiana State Senate in the early 90s, and during that tenure he was under investigation by the FBI for bribery. We're going to go into, there was subsequently a trial, and he was found guilty, served 33 months in prison. After a 41-month sentence, 33 months he actually served and paid a $20,000 fine. But today I'd like to give you some of the specifics that were on some of those FBI wiretaps, because Louisiana Governor John Bell Honor Code Edwards has chosen, against the desires of our Attorney General Jeff Landry, to place Mr. Bankston in some very key positions, including being the attorney for the Louisiana Contractors Board. And we'll have a little bit more of that toward the end of this video, and why that may be a decision Mr. Edwards, or Governor Edwards, will live to regret. But I want to go into these FBI wiretaps, and let me just say this, Mr. Bankston and I have quite a history. We've gotten to know each other very well over the last 5 years since he was named as an attorney for the Louisiana Auctioneers Licensing Board. Now, at the very time that Mr. Bankston and I met, I had 2 strikes against me. And let's go over that first strike that I had against me. And it is that I have a proclivity, when I deem it necessary, to record my phone calls. For those of you who may wonder about the legality of that, in the state of Louisiana, as is the case with many other states, it is legal to record phone calls as long as one party to the phone call has knowledge of the fact that it is being recorded. Once again, recording a phone call is perfectly legal as long as one party of that phone conversation is aware that it is being recorded. But be that as it may, we're going to break away for just a moment into a hearing that this is never before seen footage of the LALB Auctioneers Licensing Board meeting of May of 2013. I'm going to give you the question right before Mr. Bankston quizzes me about recording my phone calls, and because you'll see he's just a tad bit testy throughout the hearing, and then you'll see him kind of start to delve into me recording my phone calls when I deem it necessary. So let's break away for about 40 seconds or so and let you see that little line of questioning.
How Ms. Basula found Ms. Willis?
I think I indicated to you I gave her the number.
So the first number out of the box concerning all of this by Ms. Basula for you was unsolicited, without any knowledge of how she got your telephone number or whatever.
That's right. Yes, I'm sorry.
And she did not indicate to you one way or the other how she got that number.
That's correct.
Mr. Burns, do you record telephone conversations that you have with people?
Occasionally.
And what occasions do you record these conversations?
If I feel I have a need to.
And when do you have a need to?
That's my discretion. All right, so you can see that Mr. Bankston has a little bit of concern about anyone who would record their phone calls. As I said, that was one strike against me. Let's delve into why he would have such concern. Going to give you the link for the first little dialogue of the FBI wiretaps. It's right here. This is dialogue that Mr. Bankston has. Unbeknownst to him, he is being recorded, and what is ironic, and as you saw to the title of this email, he makes some rather interesting quotes on here that lets it be known exactly how he feels about anyone recording their phone calls, and for the obvious reason. Now, this is from the October 31st, 1994 wiretap of the FBI, and we'll give you the link where you can go in and see all of this correspondence out there, but I've tried to make it simple for you by copying and pasting so you don't have to go through just an ungodly volume of material to get what I have conveniently copied and pasted for you here, and I have some of it highlighted. Again, this is from the October 31st, 1994 FBI wiretap. Bankston, Bob, I'm going to stay away from Mike Brassett and stay away from his entire thing. The thing is, it's going to blow up, and I don't want to be involved when it blows up. Miller, okay. Mr. Bankston, and I don't want to be involved with people that effing tape people's phone conversations. I'm not going to use the actual word. You're going to see Mr. Bankston use that word repeatedly in some of these wiretaps. I'll keep it G-rated for the audience, but you can fill in the blank on that effing. So let's repeat that. And I don't want to be involved with people that effing tape people's phone conversations. I don't want to be around anybody that does that. Just going to read some of the highlighted text. Bankston. But I just can't afford to be involved with something, particularly when the chief is off in effing never land on stuff. You know, he's over here, he's over there. I mean, he wants to wake up one day and find somebody have them, you know, give him $1 million and not have to make any decisions. Skip on down, Bankston. Yeah, but I'm not going to be involved with anything that Mike Brassett's involved with. Bankston. I mean, after what I've just told you, do you trust him? And he sent me a letter kind of threatening me. Miller, oh, I didn't know that. Bankston, yeah. Miller, well, he likes to write letters. Bankston, yeah, I don't want to be involved with anybody that wants to talk about suing people. Now, we're about to get to another segment where Mr. Brassett was actually involved, and you'll see why he may have started having some reservations and why he started recording these phone calls. But you see Mr. Bankston's reaction to it. So I'm going to take just a moment and hit some of these highlights again. I don't want to be involved with people that effing tape their phone conversations. And particularly when the chief is off in effing never land on stuff. You know, he's over here, he's over there. I mean, he wants to wake up one day and find somebody have them, you know, give him $1 million and not have to make any decisions. So that'll wrap up for Wiretap number 1 of October 31st, 1994. Now, I told you a moment ago that I had 2 strikes against me. Let's move on to the second strike, and that is the fact that I am a CPA. And this is going to be, and we'll give you the link for this portion of the wiretaps, the FBI wiretaps. This was a wiretap on December 28th, 1994. Now, you'll see the folks involved in this wiretap find things to be, they're having some laughter and some, some good-natured ribbing. Of course, I'm sure in the end they didn't find it all too funny when the contents of some of these wiretaps came out. But again, this is 12/28/94. Going to give you the link for it. Bankston, I do want to participate in as many of these locations as I can. Goodson is the one who ultimately was convicted of bribing Senator Bankston. He's the one that actually resulted in Bankston going to prison in having received a bribe from Fred Goodson. Okay, but I see I've got down in Marrero and Gretna, we've got Nunez. That would be Sammy Nunez, former senator from Louisiana. And I was trying to do something in his hometown, and we couldn't. So he said his territory was St. Bernard Parish, and those locations are in St. Bernard. They're not in West Wego. But we went down and we had talked to John. Now that would be John Alario, the current president of the Louisiana Senate and basically a fixture in the Louisiana legislature. He's been there forever. We talked with John about how we were doing down there and we got his blessing. Put a little pin around that one in addition to highlight it. It's like we're talking about a group of mafia folk. This is your territory. This is my territory. It'd be nice if you could just feel free to do business in Louisiana without it being a mafia-like atmosphere. Goodson, it's all going to go right now. Bankston, yeah, Goodson. And I don't want to commit myself to these people and then turn around and not be able to produce. Some more highlighted text. Bankston. I mean, my wife is about to choke me, Fred. And Fred, Goodson. For what? Bankston. She said, where is all this happening? Snickers. The worst thing about this, Fred, is I'm married to a CPA. Goodson. Oh my gosh. Bankston. Nothing worse than a CPA for a wife. She understands thee. He didn't finish the sentence, but it's in all likelihood she understands the illegality of some of this stuff. Having to speculate because Mr. Bankston wouldn't finish the sentence. But CPAs tend to have a high level of integrity because that's all they've got to sell is their word when they sign off to financial statements saying that they're accurate, or when they do taxes for someone, they're lending the credibility of their word. If they don't have that credibility, they have nothing to sell, and that's why they may be a little bit concerned about illegalities. Goodson, it ain't gonna be good. All right, folks, that's your second FBI wiretap entailing Mr. Bankston. All right, now I want to move on to the third FBI wiretap that we've copied and pasted for you. And that would be right here. We're going to give you a direct link to that third wiretap. Now, you'll recall from the first wiretap that I gave to you, and by the way, this wiretap is on September the 19th of 1994. You will recall that the first wiretap that I gave for you, Mr. Bankston is expressing concern about Mike Brassett and his proclivity to record his phone calls. In this wiretap, we're going to have Mr. Brassett involved. Now, clearly, he ended up breaking off, but you're going to find this one may be the most interesting of all. Again, this is September 19th, 1994. Bankston, I have not made a nickel off of any of this, and I wasn't going to let this get past me. Miller, okay. Bankston, they trust me implicitly. For them to tell me, quote, I want you to get this. Miller, well, there's a couple of things we can work with. Number one is, we can do a percentage of the net. The other thing is, consulting fees, the old-fashioned stuff. Or we can have you as counsel through the life of the project. Bankston, I don't want to be your lawyer. Miller, you don't? Well, what do you want to be? Bankston, I don't want to be your lawyer. I mean, being a lawyer, all you can get paid for is your time, and the time, you don't get compensated adequately as a lawyer. Bankston, Jackson, wants to be left alone by all the other gaming companies in the state. Let me tell you what, that's your biggest problem. Now, I want to emphasize there, Larry Bankston is saying, I'm not interested in just being your lawyer. I want in on the action. Okay? Miller, well, explain what that means to me. Bankston, it means that players will do anything and everything to stop or slow down this project. Miller, so what are you going to do? Bankston, I can protect you from these guys. Miller, because, Bankston, the most precious quote of all, because of who I am. Wow. Didn't I told you about corollaries to the mafia earlier? Bankston's going to offer protection. How can he do it? Because of who I am. Bankston, there are some other people from Louisiana that will need to be taken care of. Let me read that again. Bankston, there are some people some other people from Louisiana that I will need to take care of. As a result of that and what the chief tells me to do, chief being of an Indian Choctaw tribe. Now here comes Brassett. He had previously said, I guess we got to keep this sucker quiet. And I guess that's why we got to keep this so quiet. Now Brassett, down here at the bottom, this is Mike Brassett, the one who would subsequently decide to start recording his phone calls. Brassett said, well, I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. This is in response to Bankston saying, I want to read that again. There are some other people from Louisiana that I will need to take care of. And Brassett says, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about here. I mean, that know about this deal? Bankston, no. Well, you can see Brassett is having some reservations about all this. His quote was, I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. And you can read into that he's getting a little bit apprehensive about some of the discussion, the way this route is going. It's probably what led to him recording his phone calls. And let me tell you something, when you're dealing with Larry Bankston, I will tell you right now, you damn well better record the phone call, okay? And so that'll wrap up wiretap number 3. We're going to move into wiretap number 4. But again, I want to state, boy, it sure does sound like we're talking about a mafia operation here. In the previous wiretap, we talked about Nunez and him having his territory. We talked about John Alario and him having his territory. Now we got Mr. Bankston saying, I ain't going to do this, just be your lawyer, just get straight up time. You can't make any real money that way. I believe they talked about in here, or maybe that's the next wiretap, they talk about just exactly what they can provide to Mr. Bankston. Apparently that's in the next wiretap. So with that, why don't we move in to that next wiretap, shall we? Now, the fourth wiretap, and I was correct, all these wiretaps start to run together at some point when I mentioned in the third one. It is this fourth one where Mr. Bankston, they're going to talk about specifically what he would get. This is from the September 30th, 1994 FBI wiretap. September 30th, 1994. We'll just go right off. Miller, we'll give you 5% of the 8% that we have. Now remember, Bankston said, I don't want to just be compensated as your lawyer. You can't make any money with that. I want to hit the jackpot here. I want in on the action. So here we have Miller saying, we'll give you 5% of the 8% that we have, that the three of us have. Is that going to be sufficient? Bankston, oh, that will be fine. Bankston, we'll take care of it. Everybody that needs to be taken care of. Wow, I mean, some of these quotes in these wiretaps are unfreaking believable. We'll take care of it. Everybody that needs to be taken care of. Well, whose name do you want this stuff in? That's Miller. Bankston, I'm going to give you a corporate name. Miller, I'm telling you that we're going to do this. We're going to give you the 5% and you're going to make the crooked ways straight. Let's repeat that. I'm telling you that we're going to do this. We're going to give you the 5% and you're going to make the crooked ways straight. Bankston. And I can do that because let me tell you what, Bankston, they're going to come out like gangbusters against us. That is why this thing has to be kept very quiet. Miller, you think you can keep them off our backs? Bankston, oh yes sir. Yes, sir. So I think you can see these are pretty damning FBI wiretaps. It's basically a mafia-like discussion going on. May as well be. Territories. Not going to just have the straight. The old-fashioned deal of just I'll work and get paid for what I work. Forget that. When you're in the legislature, hey, you're going to get me in on the action here. We done talked about Nunez's territory. We've talked about Hilario's territory. Yeah, Banks says, I ain't made a nickel off of this, and I ain't letting this pass by. All right? Talk about his wife. Somewhere in here said that she's a little greedy. See if I can get, I know that was in there somewhere. Anyway, I was on a wiretap somewhere. But at any rate, he was saying that the 5% would be fine for him. So you're getting an idea of just how corrupt Larry Bankston is. And you may say, well, why are you bringing all this out now? And we're going to have a follow-up segment to this. But for right now, I'm just going to give you a link for an Advocate article. Mr. Bankston has managed to get himself in yet another controversy in less than a year on the Louisiana State Contractor Board at a time when flood victims are anxiously awaiting, trying to get their funds. Mr. Bankston has gone to bat saying and provided an advisory opinion saying that, well, bidders 1 and bidders 2 should be disqualified. And he didn't divulge that, oh, by the way, my son's got an interest in bidder number 3. And even though they were $100 million over bidder number 1, IEM, we need to disqualify those first 2. You'll see in the article that quite a number of critics of Mr. Bankston and the American Bar Association saying that he had an obligation to divulge the fact that his son had an interest in bidder number 3. And of course, Bankston's going to stand up and say, well, I didn't know. Give me a frickin' break. Do you have any idea how many people have contacted me about this? And if all of these people are going to know, you're going to tell me the father of the man that's got this interest that he doesn't know? Oh, yeah, right, Mr. Bankston. I will provide a video for you. I challenged him to a polygraph examination over a matter in the LALB. I will pay for the polygrapher. He won't take me up on it. In fact, he laughs at the idea. And I will tell you, put a polygrapher on him about whether or not he knew or not about his son. Watch the needle go off the arm. Now, let me just say one last thing, and then we'll wrap this thing up. I sent an email to the executive director of and I sent it before any of these news articles broke because of what I was getting, all this information from all these sources that, hey, you got to go after Bankston on this. He is not divulging that his son is part of the third place finisher. So I sent an email to Michael McDuff, the executive director of the contractor board. And we're going to give you a direct link. That was done on Monday, March the 20th, before this story in the Advocate even broke. And you're going to see Mr. McDuff's terse response back to me, in which he said, it's my understanding that Mr. Bankston doesn't have a son and he had no obligation to recuse himself. Wow. And I told him, I said, I sure hope you're right. Because if I find out you're wrong, I'm going to enjoy throwing this email up in your face. Mr. McDuff will be on the distribution for this, and I am now throwing that email up in your face, Mr. McDuff, because if you were this asleep at the wheel, then you have no business being where you are. And it's this kind of, even if you want to give yourself the benefit of the doubt, it's this kind of blind-eyed corruption that has this state in the mess that it's in. Now, Attorney General Jeff Landry vigorously opposed having Mr. Bankston in these positions. I think it's becoming obvious he was right, as most people with common sense would know. But Governor John Bell Honorcut Edwards is so indebted to so many folk for having gotten him in the office, and Mr. Bankston is one of them because of the long-time stand-in of Mr. Bankston's father, Jesse Bankston, who headed the Democratic Party and had a Democratic machine. You're starting to see some of that in those days, you know, Mr. Bankston. Because of who I am, I'm the son of the long-time head of the Democratic Party here. You think I can't get things done? All right. But we're talking about pure rank corruption. Now, Judge Hernandez, as most folk would know, there was litigation between the governor and the Attorney General's office about whether or not who has final say on these contracts. Judge Hernandez came out with a ruling that said it's the Attorney General. So most of these contracts expire at the end of a fiscal year, June 30th. I would encourage anybody watching this video, please contact Attorney General Jeff Landry and get him to go ahead and use that power that he's been forced. And let's do everything we can to get this corrupt man away from getting all these state contracts for these boards and commissions. You see what's happening from it. You see from that article what's happening from it. And it is just a problem for disaster. And I'm going to tell you, John Bell Edwards right now is having an awful lot of corruption just come blowing up right out of his face. All four of the State Police Commission members who pulled this stunt with Kathy Durbin, they're all his appointments. Not one of them was a Bobby Jindal appointee. I mean, we got FBI. Got FBI subpoenas going out to 18 members of the State Troopers Association for grand jury inquiries. We've got his brother having his office raided and the scene declared a crime scene. Now we've got Mr. Bankston trying to get in here and nudge his way in and screw the taxpayers out of $100 million. I mean, we got some serious problems with the governor of this state. And isn't it ironic that he would tout himself as, I don't lie, I don't cheat, I don't steal, and I don't tolerate those that do. It is becoming abundantly apparent, Governor Edwards, that you not only tolerate it, in the case of that State Police Commission, not only was it your four members that pulled that little stunt, but your hand-picked man who headed your state super PAC, Taylor Townsend, sits there in the room and helps orchestrate it. So I would submit that you do, not only do you tolerate it, you engage in it directly through someone you would have like Taylor Townsend in that State Police Commission meeting. It is time we as citizens of this state started demanding integrity, and trust me, we do not have it in the governor's office right now, particularly with appointments like Larry Bankston. Now, the next episode, we will be having another episode on Larry Bankston, because I cannot tell you the number of people that have asked me, how in the hell did Larry Bankston get his law license back? That's going to be the subject of the second feature. It cost me $100 in terms of a public records request to get all of the letters of recommendation given to the Louisiana State Supreme Court to grant him his license back. We're going to be highlighting some of those. There's some very interesting figures that even some that currently serve in our state legislature. So you made the statements. We're going to highlight them. We're going to put it out there, and we're going to show you what all went into Larry Bankston getting his law license back, including one member of that panel that reviewed it who said flatly he has no business having his license back. So once again, I want to encourage you to contact both the governor's office and the attorney general's office, and let's start putting an end to this kind of corruption. Louisiana has had it for too long. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This is Robert Burns. We'll have the second installment of Larry Bankston coming up very soon. Thank you so much.